Welcome to the follow-up question. I'm your host, Michael Ashford. I'm a former journalist who wants to help tell amazing stories simply by asking questions. My job on this show is to ask questions, get out of the way, and let my guests' stories shine through. Everyone has a story to tell, and listening to someone speak their truth and their experience is one of the most human things we can do. And more than ever, there is a general lack of willingness to go deep to understand why people think, act, and believe like they do, especially when there are differences of opinions. And my goal is to counter that by exposing the stories that deserve to be told so that we all might better empathize with the people, the human beings around us. So whether you're a journalist, a podcaster yourself, a blogger, someone who wants to learn how to be quick to listen and slow to speak, or someone who just likes to hear great stories, this is the show for you. And today I have a great story. Today I welcome Jonathan Ronzio, and summarizing who Jonathan is and what he is all about is kind of difficult. I mean, if I just tick off some of the things that I wrote down here prior to my conversation with Jonathan, the CMO and co-founder at a company called Trainual, and he started that with his brother, the host of the Stokecast, a podcast that talks about outdoor adventures and entrepreneurship. He's a filmmaker. He writes songs and music. He was a competitor on NBC's Spartan Race Season 1. We go into all of these different subjects, and we even discuss how difficult it is for Jonathan himself to describe who he actually is and what he does without an hour-long conversation like he and I have on this episode. But we get into a lot of his journeys in outdoor adventures and filmmaking and try to expand that out into what happens, the shift that happens to outside perception of you and your goals and your dreams before you do the thing and after you do the thing. When you as an entrepreneur or as an adventurer or as a filmmaker have a goal and it's so clear in your mind, what happens when other people don't necessarily understand or share that view versus what happens when you've actually gone and done the thing. And Jonathan and I talk about many times he's gone and done the thing, and we'll talk. You'll obviously hear what those things are, but just incredible stories, some really dicey situations, as you'll hear, and it's just a fascinating conversation with a guy who has so many different aspects to his makeup and his character and who he is as a person. So great conversation. I'm going to let him tell it. He tells his story better than I ever could. So here you go, my interview with Jonathan Ronzio. If you think of outdoor adventures, if you think of everything that you've done, is there a moment, is there a point in time where you're standing somewhere that you immediately go back to?
Yeah, I mean, as soon as you started asking that, the moment that I thought about was being stuck on a beach in Arica, Chile. This was in 2013. It was part of my Between the Peaks adventure, which was a documentary film that myself and two friends went and made. We bought a one-way ticket to Chile and went and climbed Mount Aconcagua in Argentina. And then after that, we had actually bought a truck. As soon as we got to Chile, we were in Santiago. We bought a truck. We spent 5 days trying to figure out how to actually get a car and like going to all these lots and whatever, trying to bargain. And we ended up having to like do all the paperwork that we couldn't even really understand. My friend Ryan ended up like drawing the short straw. He got a Chilean tax ID number and had to like actually register for all this. Apparently though, like a month into it, we actually didn't have all the registration correct. So we get like, after climbing the mountain, we planned to drive the whole stretch of the Pan American north to get back to the States and eventually get up to Alaska. And we're a little over a month into the trip, and we make it to had driven through the whole Atacama Desert of Chile and had made it to the northern border of Chile, and then get turned around, can't get into Peru. And so we tried again the next day. They let us out of Chile, actually, but then Peru again wouldn't let us in. And so we were kind of like stuck in this no man's land. And we just ended up having to like live out of our like high altitude mountaineering tent on the like 98-degree Chilean beach. Just like we threw a Se Vende like for sale sign on the truck, and we had to just like spend 2 weeks trying to get rid of this thing and eventually sold it. But like that's the moment that came back to my head, because that was like the most wild, unexpected experience. Like 2 years of planning this thing, we could have never figured that we'd be like spending 2 weeks of the entire 4-month long adventure stuck in this like northern border town beach in Chile on the middle of nowhere. Just, it was wild, but that's what I think back to. It's that moment, and it's any other moment that was not planned. It was unexpected. The things that kind of like went wrong that you have to figure it out. That's kind of what I love about adventure. And Yvon Chouinard, Patagonia founder, he says like it's not an adventure until something goes wrong. And that's like those are the moments that you learn about yourself. And those are the moments that like translate to everything else that I do, any creative project, any entrepreneurial endeavor, any business thing. Like it's through those moments, like being stuck in this beach in Chile, that you learn, what you really have as far as resourcefulness and grit and, ingenuity and creativity to like figure it out and get through it. Right.
Where does your mind go in those situations where you get thrown that obstacle, you get thrown hey, you can't enter this country right now and you got to wait 2 weeks on a beach? How do you, and two-part question, where does your mind go? And whatever that response is, how did you come to build that? Is that something that you built?
I think you do through experiencing that. I think like, early on you get into those kinds of moments and it's easy to overreact or to kind of freak out a little bit. And I think just through all the years I think people who pursue these types of outdoor adventures maybe find themselves in situations like that more than the rest. So you learn, but I think just over the years of experiencing those kind of like, oh shit moments, you learn how to process it without freaking out. And so for me, where my mind goes like, okay, what do I have? What do I need? Where's the gap? Right. And I just kind of try to take a step back. Sometimes we got to go get an empanada and a beer and kick back and not think about it and just like reassess it, in a couple hours. Sometimes you got to like meditate or go for a run. Like there are things that you can do to just like disconnect your mind from the, like what might be overwhelming in the moment about what went wrong or what feels, where you're stuck or what feels like the thing you can't do and need to figure out. So I think it's always good to like take a breather and a break to disconnect the emotion from the situation. And then it's just, what do you have? What do you need? And mapping, charting the course to figure out, okay, cool. Like, in this specific context, it was like, we've got this, this paperwork. We've got X amount of dollars. We've got this much food. We've got our tent. We've got it was just kind of like taking stock of the resources we had at hand. And then it was okay. So we're supposed to be, at our next place where we were going to be volunteering in Ocamayo, Peru in the next 13 days or something. Like, how do we get there? What are the things we have to do to get there? Can we feasibly like update the paperwork we need and try to get through again? Or should we go through the process to like transfer registration and sell the, like, it was just kind of like we mapped out the plan based on the objective of like, we're here, we need to get there. Right.
What do you think hampers people from going through that process that you just described? Why don't people immediately dive into that kind of taking stock of what you have versus what you need?
Man, I really feel like a lot of factors influence that. And it can go back as far as, early childhood for a lot of people and the amount of like encouragement and confidence that you were given as a kid. I very fortunately had a beautiful childhood with a loving family and parents that, that were always encouraging and optimistic and allowed me to try and fail and, and keep cheering. Right. And so like maybe early on, I kind of just was like built with that kind of DNA to have more confidence potentially in those situations where I think a lot of people, it does take some effort to retrain your mind, how to handle the setback, how to handle a negative situation, because the piece that's crippling for most is the, I can't, right? I don't know how.
Yeah.
And a lot of people will internalize that to such a great degree that when presented with the obstacle, it's a lot harder for them to see a clear path to the solution because they're focused on what they can't do or don't have instead of how to, get to where they need to get and what are the pieces that they need to change as far as behavior or do. I think that that's something that people need to like actively internalize and work on themselves, is like, how do you handle those moments? And if you're not instantly, able to take a breather and a break and approach it from a creative, optimistic standpoint, then it's like, where did that start for you and how do you solve for that?
What was the driver for that project and that documentary? What took you to South America, and what was the impetus there?
Sure. All right. Well, there's a few factors here. So senior year of college, I had read the book Beyond the Horizon by Colin Angus. It was, he was the first person to circumnavigate the globe on nothing but human power. And I had watched the documentary 180 South, which is a story of Jeff Johnson going down, trying to, go south down the Pan American to get down to Corcovado to climb that in Chile, to recreate an initial climb and an initial adventure that Doug Tompkins, the founder of North Face, and Yvon Chouinard Patagonia had done back in the 60s or something. And he was going to recreate this. And like those two, the book and the movie, alongside the guys from The Buried Life. I don't know if you remember that show on MTV, but there was like four dudes, that like bought a bus, and they went around and tried to like knock off an item from their bucket list and help somebody out. And they did a show. They had come to my school to speak as well. And so those three things were kind of like, all inspiring me in the same moment for me to think about, like, you don't have to be some sort of like, the celebrity or the people that you see, like the National Geographic Adventurer of the Year that I'd always like seen every single year and looked up to. Like, they, before getting that, were nobody except somebody with a dream that they acted on. And I saw very clearly the difference was just like, what separates me from them? Nothing, except the fact that they acted on something they wanted to do. They dedicated themselves to it. They worked towards it. They trained for it, whatever. They made it happen. They tried. Right. And so I had that kind of inspiration. And the backstory there was I'd, grown up building a video production company with my brother. He had started it in high school. I was younger, was always helping him, learning. And then for a decade, we were, working together, growing this thing. And so I had this background in video production. I was studying marketing in school, and was really passionate about like storytelling and creativity and production. And then I had studied abroad in New Zealand. And there is where I kind of developed this addiction to all things adrenaline and adventure and exploration. And so when I was looking at what's next after college, those three pieces of inspiration were like there at the right moment for me to be able to kind of crystallize an idea in my mind that allowed me to combine an education in marketing, a passion for adventure, and an experience in production into this concept of Between the Peaks. And so I called up my best friend and was like, hey, so I've got this kind of crazy idea. What do you think about climbing the tallest mountain in South America and then traveling north up the Pan American for however many months it takes to like volunteer for a bit through every single country we pass through and eventually get to Alaska and climb Denali? And the whole concept being like, I want to have these great adventures and I want to climb these mountains, but like that journey along the way and like the people that we meet and the cultures that we experience and the places that we can volunteer and help, that's more of the story than anything else. And he was into it. And so we both just packed up my car and drove west and ended up for a summer in California and then a year in Aspen, and got another buddy, Ryan, to move out to Aspen. And for a year working as a bartender and a snowboard instructor after I graduated college, I was doing that to, in the background, do all the planning and build the framework and lay the groundwork for the Between the Peaks idea. And just like relentlessly, stupidly, even optimistically just kept, I was just like, this is the thing that I need. I don't know why I was so driven to make it happen, but to me, it was just like, there's no way I can't do this. And we built the plan. We talked to the planned out like who we were going to work with in what countries and basic timeline and what we had to do to train for these mountains. And then put together like a proposal and went and started talking to like local press, and they did some stories. And then from there I was, went and like knocked on doors at the Boulder Business Park trying to like talk to outdoor brands to get them bought in. And Justin's Nut Butter was the first one to do it. Like Ryan and I, basically, we were sleeping in my car, climbing in Boulder Canyon for a few days, and like climbing in the morning, and then like passing out flyers in the afternoon, trying to get sponsors. And like after Justin's was like, yep, that sounds awesome, then they started trickling in, and we ended up getting like 11 outdoor brands to give us not money, but like a bunch of gear, food, and promotion. And then we bought a one-way ticket that fall and left just after New Year's 2013. And I mean, the trip didn't go totally as planned. We didn't even make it to Alaska on that first round. We ran out of money in Guatemala. But it was like, it was killer. And I recommend everybody like find that spark of inspiration and just relentlessly pursue it. See how big you can go, or how far you can go, or find your breaking point.
Jonathan, you used the word in there to describe it. You said stupidly. Why did you use that particular term?
I mean, because that's the like outside perception of what we were doing at the time. Now it's amazing. Like I'm talking about this and you're interested in this story. And I believed wholeheartedly that when I came back, whether the film, became anything or did well, or it led to any other opportunities, I knew, one, this was going to be the adventure of a lifetime with a couple of my best friends. Worth it just for that reason. Two, if nobody else watches this, like someday I've got like 50 hours worth of footage that my grandkids can watch and see like their grandfather as like a 22-year-old just having a blast through South America. And that's such a cool time capsule. I wish I could see those moments from my, grandparents who are now gone. It's like so cool. And then thirdly, I knew like whatever was next for my career, if I did have to go and get, any kind of traditional job, this is the kind of thing that sets you apart from a stack of resumes and other candidates. It's to be able to talk about these experiences. And not just that, like I went and ditched and had like a gap year and traveled. It's like, I built this thing, right? Like I created this project. I built like a whole press and marketing plan and got the relationships, and like the project itself was the work experience as much as the adventure was amazing. So I knew that this was going to be worth it no matter what for those reasons. But from outside looking in, a lot of my friends at that time were, I was graduating from a business school and people were getting jobs in finance and insurance and like these management positions and following more traditional careers. And, wondering like, what the hell is Jonathan doing? He's just like off like bartending in Aspen and like sleeping in the dirt in South America. Like what is wrong with this guy? And I put basically the whole trip on credit cards. Like I took out a bunch of cards and just like spent, whatever we had to make it happen. I like spent all of my savings. I had to defer my student payments for 9 months, like my student loan payments for 9 months, to not pay those. And then like it was, from a financial standpoint, a horrible decision, but like I wouldn't trade it for the world. And so I think that was like, probably late summer into early fall, before we even bought the one-way ticket. That was the thing that like, I kept coming back, like, there was so much like outside pressure of like, what are you doing? And why? And it was very hard for me to communicate to other people the passion and the dedication and the commitment that I had. And I think that that's something that a lot of entrepreneurs or creators share, is that we can get blindly optimistic on the thing that we see, so clearly and believe in so wholeheartedly. And it's almost like waking up from a dream that you can remember every vivid, weird detail from that dream. But when you go to describe it to your partner or your friend or whoever, you somehow can't put the words, because it's like some dreams just don't make sense.
Yeah.
You can picture what happened, but you don't know how to explain it. Right.
Yeah. And even trying to describe your dreams, it usually doesn't come out nearly as good. So
yeah.
What do you think changes in those moments where you're talking about your dream, you're talking about this thing that you want to do, and people are saying that's stupid, that's illogical, and you go and do it, and all of a sudden there's a sense of awe, or even me right now wanting to learn more about it, and you've done it. What do you think changes in people's perception now that you've done it versus when you were just talking about it?
I think it's unfortunate, but I think innately people have a tendency to underestimate. And whether that's because inwardly they like don't necessarily want to believe you can achieve that because it makes them feel bad that they're not achieving enough, or whatever they might be questioning in their mind. Like, I don't know. I think there's just something that like people, the majority of people love to cheer on, the people who've accomplished something, but like have a harder time believing that you can, right? I don't have the answer for that, but I know that like when you're climbing a mountain, or just if you're out for a hike, right? Like, and you're just like miles into the hike, people have a tendency to ask, you pass somebody, you're going this way, somebody else is coming this way. You have a tendency to ask them like, how long till the top? How much farther? Right? Because
Yep.
they've been there. They're coming from the direction that they've been. Yep. And so that person will give you, like, as best to their knowledge, an estimate of how much farther you have to go. And you trust that because you feel like, oh, they've been there. Whereas if you were just hiking this way and somebody else is hiking up faster behind you, they might hike that same trail every single day and they know it better than anybody. But because they're going the same direction as you, you don't stop and ask them, how much farther? You ask the people who have been there.
Yeah. No, it's interesting, man. Speaking of the mountains and adding that as part of this, why did you want to incorporate climbing these two peaks into this experience and into this journey? I think some people would say, well, why not just go do the volunteer experience and work your way up through the U.S. or through South America and into the U.S.? What was important about adding the element of the hike and the climb that made it important to you?
Well, I mean, I was just always obsessed with climbing, I guess. I don't know. As a kid, I was always climbing trees. As you know, through high school, I started enjoying hiking around New Hampshire and like doing some of the hikes in the White Mountains and getting to the summit. Like, I just always loved seeing how much further and higher I could go. And when it got harder, it got more exciting. And so then in college, I did a lot more rock climbing and like some bigger trips. And then after college, when I was out in California, ended up, doing some climbing around Big Sur, and then moved to, Aspen and did a lot of climbing around the 14ers there.
Yeah.
And so I just, for whatever reason, was drawn to the mountains and to scaling peaks, whether it was like rock or ice or hiking, or I just love the outdoors and love all the components that go into mountaineering. So for me, it was like, kind of the trip was like, as much as it was important for me to go climb those mountains and to like try to attempt those summits, I also was realizing like, whoa, that's like super fortunate for me to even have that opportunity and to have the time or money or energy to, whatever went into giving me the potential to even do that. I wanted at the same time to not just fly in and fly out and do, like, I wanted to really experience the people and the culture and like also give back along the way. And I was a minor in environmental science. So I just had a passion for environmentalism as well. So hard for me to say like why I'm drawn to peaks and why I wanted to do that. But it was almost like I didn't want to just climb the peaks. As exciting as those things were for me, I wanted a more educational journey and a more hands-on experience with the cultures than just showing up to the terrain. Right.
Is it ever frustrating as a filmmaker? And I know you're into music and writing songs, but now actually as a CMO at a company that you helped co-found, do you ever find yourself getting frustrated by having so much to tell and understanding your dreams and the story and the narrative and figuring out how to tell it in a way that people understand it?
Yeah. Because I'm so interested in so many different things, it's a constant frustration. Or I don't even know if it's a frustration, but a constant confusion of my life is right. Like, getting into this interview could have gone one of many different ways. And I love that we're talking about this and Between the Peaks and adventure and how all that blends together. But your first question could have been about like, my days like touring as a singer-songwriter, and like the music that I've been put out, and like what I'm working on now for tracks to release before the end of the year. Or we could have talked about like, things more related to, and we might get into this, but like the stuff I'm doing with like growing Trainual and our marketing and brand and content and storytelling, and like how the hell I went from Mountaineer to CMO. Right. And like that, there's a lot of different things that we could talk about. And even like you said before we started recording, around like athletics and Spartan Race and like TV and things like that. Right. There are so many different components that like, I'm so fortunate, but I think it's like, I've just got this obsessive compulsive need to try every single idea and to go and try my hand at a lot of different things, that I end up having some sort of weird, like, check box of like a life experience. Like I'm trying to live like 100 lives in 100 years. Right. And it's like musician and chef and beer brewer and mountaineer and marketer and athlete and speaker and whatever else. And I just happen to have basically created so far like 7 careers in the last 6 years. I don't know.
What are
it's hard for me to like say what I am. That's the hardest question. Is my wife doesn't even know how to describe what I do.
Well, it was hard for me to come up with that first question to ask you, because there is so much, like you said. Jumping into entrepreneurship and building a company and marketing a brand. What are the parallels? What are the lessons that you draw out of adventure and these extreme things that you have done? I think a lot of people would consider them extreme in relation to their own life. What do you draw from those experiences that help you as a CMO, as a chief marketing officer at a company that you're trying to grow and scale?
I think the 2 things that really come to mind are, I don't know, maybe 3 actually. So there's resiliency, right? So in the adventure world, like the deeper you go into outdoor and mountain athletics, the harder you push yourself. And there's something in the outdoor space we call type 2 fun, which is the kind of adventure or outing or hike or climb or whatever that in the moment, which happens to me almost every time I go out. Like if I go to Splitboard, a volcano out in like, I don't know, California or something, in the moment at 3 a.m. when I'm skinning up like this slope with an 80-pound pack, I am like, why the hell am I doing this? Like, what? I don't understand why I like this. Do I just like the idea of this? Like, what am I doing? It's miserable. So it's like in type 2 fun is in the moment, you're like not loving it. But as soon as it's done, all you can do is smile about it, talk about it. The experience was incredible. It's so like, you feel so accomplished. And so I think that how hard you can push yourself in these outdoor sports and on these adventures and how uncomfortable you can get contributes to how resilient you can be in anything else in your life. And so I think from an entrepreneurial standpoint, entrepreneurs have to have a weird level of resiliency to even succeed, because it's hard as hell. Right. And you have to have the energy to be able to push past like when things are uncomfortable. And so that's, I think, one part of it. Another is, I think, fear. And, a lot of the situations that I've been in the outdoors have been wildly scary. And I've had plenty of near-death experiences and have been in really terrifying terrain. And so I think there's something that you learn about how to handle fear in those areas and how to not overcome it, not beat it, but how to like channel it and control it. And that feeds into helping like how you can approach the hardest times of building a business, or the biggest risks, the scariest bets, the things that you have to do. So that relationship with fear, I think, is really, really beneficial. And then I think the other one is just like speed and agility, right? And in the outdoors, you have to get really okay in rapidly changing environments. Like climbing Denali a few years ago, like I'm descending, and then all of a sudden a like huge whiteout comes in, and I'm at 15,000 feet on the tallest mountain in North America, where the closest any civilization or plane or whatever is miles and miles away. Like you're so remote and isolated there, total self-reliance. And it's like in the middle of a whiteout, like trying to navigate this vast, crazy terrain with like snow bridges and crevasses everywhere that are not marked, and having the ability to be able to handle that kind of like change in the environment. This goes back to the first thing we talked about, is like when things change, how do you control yourself to like figure out how to continue moving on? And I think that applies to business in the sense that when things like COVID hit, the companies that are doing better right now were, ones that were fortunately like poised to be like a great thing for work from home or work out from home or whatever those companies are. Right.
Yeah.
But it's also businesses who are really okay with quickly throwing out the playbook, throwing out the plan, the annual plan, the marketing plan, whatever it was, and pivoting on a dime to something new, something untested, unproven. And so I think agility in that sense, to pivot and push forward when things change, is absolutely a correlation.
How did you get out of that situation on Denali?
By taking off the split boards, getting onto crampons. So it was the three of us roped up. I was up on the lead, and so we put on the crampons to go a little slower and have a little more footing, because it's hard to snowboard with like a sled attached to you and roped up. So so we reduced pace and just tried to follow the GPS track that I had on my little navigation unit as best as possible. And fortunately we made it down to where the whiteout broke, just covered in ice, like everything, just like with that rime ice all over your face and gear and all that. And it was like crazy frustrating and really hard and really scary, but we, slowed the pace and kind of controlled our fear and followed course as best we could, and got to a place where we could pitch a tent, where we felt was objectively safe. Only had a few punch throughs. I didn't drop into any crevasse, but the other two guys, they went. It was kind of like like the scene in like Ninja Turtles: Secret of the Ooze, where the like the turtle falls through the little manhole, but then gets stuck and its feet are dangling. Right. That happened to the other guys a couple times, so it was scary.
I love that you brought up a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles reference there. As a child of the 80s. Is that the diciest situation you've been in?
That one? No. No. There've been wilder experiences.
What comes to mind?
I don't know if we can get into all of them, but the first time I went heli boarding was in New Zealand. And it was the first time I'd ever been in a helicopter, like with my snowboard. And so like I get dropped off on this like peak. It was called Brownie's Nipple. And there was like supposed to be an access point to the chute below to drop in and like get through the little couloir. And that was just basically like windswept and exposed with ice and rocks. So we couldn't drop there. So we had to kind of start to traverse around the back of this little peak to get a side entry into the couloir. And all the skiers with their like two edges and poles were able to like very easily traverse this. But me on a snowboard, I like, on some steep ice, slid out on my back edge and went sliding probably like 30 yards or something, seeing that in front of me off the back of this mountain is this like massive cliff, just like would have been sure death. And was just like trying to dig my feet into the ice as hard as possible and like slam my hands into the ice. And I didn't have a axe with me to self-arrest or anything at that point because we weren't expecting to climb. It was a heli approach. So, so that could have been real bad, but I like my edge stopped on a little like ice nub. And then I was able to like flip over onto my stomach and just like punch my hands through the ice to like crawl back up until I grabbed onto somebody's ski pole. That always stands out as like one of the closest times to saying goodbye.
What was the phrase that you used? Type 2 experience? Is that
type 2 fun?
Type 2 fun. Yeah. How do you explain to somebody type 2 fun and I don't want to say convince them that it's a good thing, but How do you get over someone else's perhaps fear of type 2 fun for yourself? Like they fear for you in those moments, especially as a married man, right? Like other people are depending on you in many different ways as the, co-founder of a company. Like those can be some things that other people can have a hard time getting over, it would seem.
Yeah, I don't have the perfect answer for that, but I mean, for the sake of like my wife and my mother, I stopped telling them to a great degree the things that I do, like until after the fact. They know like generally like where I'm going, but I don't paint the picture of the danger or seriousness to like try to keep them, from worrying too much. And I think over the years of just how much I've done, they just kind of trust my judgment at this point. Like that particular moment was very early on in my career of even attempting any of this kind of stuff. So I think these days I'm more experienced, make smarter decisions, assess risk a little bit differently. So yeah, I don't know. It's not a perfect answer.
So much has been made of mental health these days for good reason, and especially in the entrepreneurship game. I don't want to call it the entrepreneurship game, especially with entrepreneurs. That seems like a heavy burden to bear if you're trying to build a company and you're not giving the full picture for those very good reasons. Where do you turn to in those moments where you need an outlet? And in business in particular, where do you go so that doesn't become overwhelming to you?
Where do I go? Like
mentally?
Yeah, I think for me, that's where music still comes into play. Creativity for me started with music. It was the first thing that, like, I think I was in 6th grade and I saved up $200 to buy a trampoline. And my dad decided that trampolines were too dangerous, or he didn't want me to have one or whatever. So I was like, all right, what's next? I'm like, I'm into Blink-182. I might as well get a guitar. right. And so I bought a guitar and then like started playing in punk bands and just like falling in love with music and writing music. And so that's kind of, like all of the February, COVID basically put a stop on 7 years of nonstop travel for me, where I was on the road at least once every month. And whether it was for speaking or climbing or just like going out to the office the last couple of years in Arizona, I'd go out there and work with our team that was local in Scottsdale. And so when that happened, I think for me, like, obviously there were a lot of other factors that were contributing to just like growing anxiety in the world and uncertainty in business and all of that. And so for me, retreating back to finding music again has really helped. And actually like kicking back and grabbing, my guitar and writing and recording, like that's where my mind goes, is like what separately from the things that I'm like focused on all day, every day, can I detach myself again and just process thoughts in a different way?
Were you an emo guy or like a screamo guy or a pop punk? Like you mentioned Blink-182. Who were your bands?
All of it. I loved Blink and New Found Glory and Yellowcard and all of them. But yeah, I was also into Seoshin and Circa and Chiodos and Under Oath. And so the whole spectrum of all of that I loved.
You're taking me back, man. You're taking me back. Where do you draw your inspiration from then as you're writing music? Where do you draw your inspiration from?
It's harder to write songs when you're happily married. It was way easier when I was like young and like breakups were running rampant and the girl that you liked just didn't like you back. Like those kinds of like emotions of want and longing for love and all of that made it way easier to write a song. These days I still write love songs and I it's very much environmental in a sense too. Like I draw a lot of like metaphors and inspiration through just like the, natural world and inspiration from camping and stars and those experiences. So yeah, there's still love songs.
I heard you say on the one of the early episodes of your podcast, the Stokecast, that the outdoors really wasn't initially like a thought for you. What to kind of go back to that topic here? What was the draw? What eventually drew you into nature and the environment and the outdoors?
Freedom, I think.
Freedom from
I think
what?
that, I don't know. It just like it always felt to me like there like unconventional possibility was there, right? Like I've never felt like I could follow the traditional path, and wouldn't be happy if I wasn't doing things a little differently, or just challenging myself in different ways. And I think that's what the outdoors provided for me, is like, if the touring like musician life wasn't gonna open up for me, I think I started to just like see uh, adventure and being on the road and as this like new unknown to explore and to find myself and my own confidence and creativity in a different way. And it was also around the same time I was I don't know, probably reading like On the Road and Dharma Bums and all the Kerouac books, and just needing to like go hitchhike and like get lost for a little bit. I don't know. There's a yin and a yang to my life for sure, where I am so happy and content being like here with my wife and dogs and around family, and like with the comforts of a good food and a great beer or something like that. But then while I'm here, I can't stop thinking about like the next time I can get away and climb the next mountain. And in July I was supposed to go down to Ecuador to climb Cotopaxi, and that didn't happen. So like I'm always thinking about the next thing, but then when I'm there, like I can't wait to plan for everything. And then when I'm there, when I'm on that peak or whatever, I'm like, uncomfortable situation it is, all I can think about is getting back. So I think that's what drives me. It's like the salty and the sweet, right? And I will never subscribe to just living one type of life or having one type of thing. I need the both sides of that. And that was like what is that? A line from Vanilla Sky too, right? I think he says like, you can't know the sweet without the sour.
Right. What?
That's adventure to me, is like finding beauty in the sour to appreciate the sweet.
Has this been a sour time for you, knowing that like your freedom that you just talked about has been drastically taken away for so many people, not just you, but what has this time been like for you, man?
It's been interesting. I wouldn't say it's been sour, no, because it's been I've spent more time at home than ever. And I've been able to do tons of stuff with home projects, and like do a lot of painting and install faucets, and like I became like the Chip Gaines version of myself in the last 6 months, getting really into like fixer upper stuff around here. And I'm still going for like runs and mountain biking and things like that. So I've been working on music a ton more. I've already recorded like 2 new songs and working on a few others that'll probably be out before the end of the year. So it's honestly been a good time. Like I think I was getting overrun with the travel, where for probably the year leading up to the end of February was the last trip I was, last time I was in an airport. I was taking red eyes all the time, and I was just like sick every single month, just totally run down, burning the candle at both ends, trying to be everywhere for everybody, trying to like build, I was at the time doing a lot of speaking for, some Fortune 500 companies, where they bring me in to do like leadership development facilitation around the adventure to leadership standpoint. I was building the podcast. I was working to build Trainual. Our team was growing faster than ever. There was just like too many things happening at the same time. And I think it was actually like a beautiful like stopping point in the world, that I'm still able to continue on with most of those projects, but because there's no expectation now for you to be there, that's been the most beautiful thing for me, is like not having to be on the road. And now like I can't wait until I can get out to another country or climb another mountain. I can't wait to plan the next adventure, but I have like really no desire to be like overloading myself with business travel now, because people have learned that like we can do business like this.
Yeah. Do you have an idea of mind in terms of where you want to go once you actually can do it again?
I mean, Cotopaxi is still on the list. I got to get down there and climb that. It's a 20,000 foot volcano in Ecuador. And I've been wanting to get up there and ski or snowboard it for a long time. So that's still high on the hit list. And maybe a bike adventure too. I've been thinking about going to Iceland and just like cycling around the ring road, doing the whole entire country, camping. That'd be cool. I've never done a big bike touring trip. I don't know. The adventure dream list is endless.
Always something new added to it. I want to go back to the beach in Chile.
Yeah.
You kind of touched on how you got out of it, but I'd love to know, to bring it full circle here in our conversation, how did you get off that beach in Chile?
Dude, I'll tell you, to this day, I can't go into the RMV without feeling some sort of PSD. What is it? PTSD?
PTSD.
Yeah. I go nuts when I sit in those lines now. We had to basically like renew the like Chilean route, which is like the registration and like there were like a bunch of different paperwork things that we had to do, get like up to speed and up to date, like actually official, before we could really like hand off the registration for somebody else. So we basically like, we'd wake up on the beach, we'd pack up our whole like campsite and tent, we'd throw it in the back of the truck, we'd drive down to like the little main area of town, we'd go to, this like government office, and they'd tell us that we needed to go over there to get that one. So we'd go and we'd wait in a 2-hour line over here. And then they'd tell us, oh, we got to go back to that office. And so we'd go back over there and we'd wait in that line, and they'd tell us like, we don't have what we need there, so we have to go somewhere else. It was basically like a week of just nobody knowing like who did what. And they open late, they close early, they take like midday breaks. The hours of operation for business in South America is crazy. So it was really inconvenient. And we, after, I don't know, 6 days of going back and forth to all these places and finally getting our applications for the right paperwork, they were like, all right, we'll check back in 10 to 14 days. And we're like, okay. So we just ended up like living on the beach for the next, 10 days and just making friends with all the other people that were camping on little compounds on this beach. Like locals that actually take their whole families and they set up compounds, and that's their, like, they live in the town, but that's their vacation, is to just go camp. And we learned to like, fish with a traditional, like big giant net that you break out and kind of like sweep back up the coast and get the fish, and learn to fillet them right there on the beach, and learn to make empanadas. And it was really beautiful. And I just played guitar at night by the fires, and it was awesome. And then eventually, we went and checked, and we had like the paperwork went through, we had it. So then the next phase was like trying to sell the thing. So then we spent another week just like driving to town every single day and trying to get somebody to buy it. And Raul, who owns a furniture shop, needed a truck to transport some furniture. So he bought it for like a fifth of what we paid for the car down in the city in Santiago. And then he drove away, and we were left there with like all our duffels and backpacks and everything just on the middle of this beach, and hitched a ride over the border, and then just caught buses and hitchhiked all the rest of the way up the Pan American.
You said a big focus of that trip and that documentary was trying to volunteer and help people. Were there any situations or people that you helped that continue to stick with you to this day?
It's funny. I think this is probably the same for so many people that do have aspirations to go volunteer in different countries. You go with an attitude of thinking you're going to help and you're going to make a difference. And like what you learn is the places you go and the people that you go to help you more than you ever could. I wouldn't venture to say that we made any sort of like, world changing impact with any of our projects, whether it was like building animal cages and for a like rehabilitation center in the middle of the Amazon, or if it was like, taking care of like the dirt kind of fields in the middle of the Chilean chinchilla reservation, or working at a school in Honduras or on a coffee plantation. Like the projects were not like, the world changing projects, but it was like, the people that we met, I still keep in touch with a lot of them. And I don't know, I think that's the real thing that stands out to me, is what you learn about yourself from being humbled in your attempts to help others. And that's why it's a worthwhile endeavor. I know voluntourism has kind of gotten a bad rap because of that simple fact, especially if you're going to help like children somewhere, and these kids like are seeing just like tourists flood in to like take pictures and then leave, and they get that like emotional abandonment kind of feeling all the time, and that they're feeling like they're being used. Like that's absolutely the worst. But so it's necessary to really think about like what kind of projects are you going to help out with, and what short-term versus long-term impact versus detriment you are having. But it's certainly worthwhile attempting to have some experience like that, because it truly is a humbling moment.
When you ran out of money in Guatemala, what was your next move? What was your thought process there?
We had all like just before leaving, just after we got to South America, we had like purchased basically ticket vouchers, as like a backup plan, that if anything ever happened, we could like, no matter where we were, we could like get a ticket out of there. So that was basically what it came down to. We ended up in Guatemala. Actually, my friend Ethan, he ended up jumping on a bus through Mexico to go to a wedding in Mexico with somebody that he knew. Randomly, he just left, and Ryan and I went to Guatemala City and flew out of there. So that was like, for us, it was the last thing we could do was just to fly home. And fortunately, we had the foresight to like plan to set aside enough for that, rather than just be penniless in southern Mexico and have to like get jobs and figure out how to pay our way back to the States. So that was the situation. We just kind of assessed. We were like, all right, we literally do not have enough money to make it to Alaska to like finish out this trip based on how we were budgeting. There was like a whole stretch of a month where like all of us lost so much weight, because we were, in the morning, we'd have like a Justin's nut butter packet. And in the afternoon we would have, we'd like share an empanada. And then in the evening we would make, like instant mashed potatoes. And we would have, we actually grabbed a whole bunch of like ketchup and mustard and mayo packets from like a little tienda that we had stopped at. And that was how we varied up our dinners. It was like, oh, tonight we're going to put the ketchup in the mashed potatoes. Now we've got ketchup flavored potatoes. Tomorrow we're going to put the mostaza in the potatoes. And now we've got mustard potatoes. So like the diet was not so good. And we got to a point of thinking like, we just can't do it.
Well, what was going through your mind on that flight back?
Excitement to see my girlfriend after 4 months. I felt definitely discontent, also, because like, as much as I was excited to go home and see her and see family, I knew we had enough of a story to tell. We had like 45 hours worth of footage that I could like put something together and create a real film, which we did. And it did end up doing pretty well at some festivals. It was basically like a feature length vlog before vlogging was a thing. And so I was excited for all those reasons, but definitely feeling like I didn't know when we'd be able to finish it. Right. And to me, I had spent 2 years like solely driven to make this dream happen. And it didn't, like, we didn't complete it. And so I was like, definitely felt a little bit of a failure to think like, what can I do with what we did? That's, I guess, where we started this conversation, right? Is like how to flip the script. And it's like, what can I do with what we did? But the fear was, there's only so many times you can convince your best friends to quit their jobs and spend all their money and follow you to some like random adventure. And in my mind, I'm thinking like, wow, that was our shot. Like, when in our lives are going to go separate directions, we're going to move different ways, get different jobs, we're all going to get married, et cetera. And so like, when is going to be the opportunity to actually attempt to finish this? Will that happen? That was a big fear of like, will we ever do something like this again? But fortunately in 2017, we did. We were able to get to Alaska, and it happened to coincide with one buddy quitting and another just like taking all of his PTO. And we went up to Denali. So it's been wild, but it's also not the end of the story.
Yeah, and similar question, what are you thinking as you do finish Denali and you come down off of that, going through that whiteout? What are the emotions? What are the thoughts there?
Well, we didn't summit, so.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So the emotion is now thinking again, when can we get back?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, hey, man.
The story goes on.
Well, man, this has been great. I've really enjoyed connecting with you and hearing this. I would love to kind of leave it with this. What's the question you wish you were asked more?
Question I wish I was asked more. Maybe how can I help? I think that's something that a lot of people in trying to build their careers, their dreams, whatever they're after, they underestimate how much they can gain by helping others. And everybody's always like, can you do this? Can you help me with this? Like, everybody wants something from somebody, a connection, an opportunity, whatever it may be. And I think you'll find there's more to be gained when you just seek to genuinely connect and help others. So I think that's like what, a lot of people reach out to me and want X, Y, and Z, a job or whatever. And like, it's a better starting point just to like, what can I do to help? I saw you're into this, like, how can I help? And I think that's something that I would love more people to not just for me, but just like that attitude, I think would do the world a better. Yeah.
Very cool, man. Hopefully I can help by sharing how to connect with you and your work, your music. So why don't you let us know how we can do that and see if we can help you out a little bit here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you could search me on really any platform, Jonathan Ronzio, Twitter, Instagram. I'm pretty active on those, on YouTube, any of that. If you're interested, you can check out the business at trainual.com. That's if you're a business owner, entrepreneur, people leader, you'd find that interesting as a tool. For music, just search Ronzio on Spotify or iTunes, and there's a couple tracks. There will be more soon. And yeah, hit me up wherever.
Very cool, man. Don't forget the Stokecast, right?
Yeah, of course. We actually just passed 100 episodes. So pretty exciting milestone for the Stokecast.
Congrats, man. Yeah, it's like you just said, or like you said earlier, you're in so many different things, but I will link everything up there so people can have access to it. But man, Jonathan, thank you so much. I have enjoyed this, and best wishes to you, man, on your next adventure.
Appreciate it, Michael. Thanks a lot.
Many thanks to Jonathan for his time and insight on the show today. Please do me and Jonathan a huge favor and share this episode with someone you know who might also find some value in listening to today's conversation. Share this episode with your network and help spread the good word about the importance of asking more questions. And if you have it in your heart, please leave a rating and review of this show wherever you might be listening. If you know someone who you think would be a great guest on the follow-up question, or have a question you'd like me to address on the future episode, or if you just want to get in contact with me, email me at michael@thefollowupquestion.com or go to thefollowupquestion.com/contact and let's connect. I'll catch you on the next episode of The Follow-Up Question, and until then, keep asking questions.